I'm Rod Duff from Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, folks, I haven't been able to upload the new trailer that has a little bit more of the content in there, and I'm still not sure, although I'm getting good feedback on that last part being dark, as I tell the story. I happen to go into the studio. The offices are back there, but I happened to go in here, and the lights aren't on all the time, right? But but the camera was on, and I sat down and I was kind of thinking about something, and I looked up, and on the screen was this really cool look. I don't think it came in as well as I thought it would, but I just made a three-minute video kind of thing on that, and thought it was cool, and the darn editors grabbed that and threw that in there. So I'm still not convinced of that thing yet. But anyway, we are in for a great conversation. I've been really excited about this because it is, we cover areas of mental health, addiction, all these different things. And in that sphere is drugs and how that affects the human brain and the body. But how natural drugs, dopamine, things that are in our system that we turn on and off is an awesome tool to be able to work. Studying the animal population that lives in the woods, that lives in the world that have their own societies, but more natural pumping because of the old hunter-gatherer, if that's what we were talking about, Loretta. That hunter-gatherer has instilled in us certain inalienable rights. No, certain DNA that is still within us from back in the days of that time in hunter-gatherer. So studying the animals from, I think we were saying the 20s, I think it was. By the way, don't worry. Dr. Loretta is going to be coming on soon and fixing all my errors. You know how that works, guys. And so she's been studying that, and this is a second career for her, which also has a little bit warm in my heart because the same thing applies here, as you all know. Anyway, I'm going to introduce now, and this is a really cool thing because you don't really ever think about it, Dr. Loretta Breuning. How are we doing today?
Hi, thanks so much for that introduction. I was applauding all the time for your explanation.
Yeah. Excellent. I love it. It's nice to hit on it. Setting off the subject and the matter, right? It's good to hit one every now and then. So I as you said, you're applauding. So obviously I kind of turned on the lights and set the stage to what is important, what the message is that's important, because it is for this is all about the great middle class, how to empower the great middle class, how to make ourselves more educated and better people in such better society, because we need to come together and the world is going fast. So why don't you take it from me and let me get a drink and get my dry throat all covered up here. All right. Thanks, Loretta.
Sure. Well, here's a very simple introduction. So most people have heard of talk in the last few years about dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, yes, endorphin, cortisol. So I first wrote a book about them 15 years ago. And what I found was that animals have the same brain chemicals that we have, and we control these chemicals with brain structures that are almost exactly the same as the animal brain. So we humans—
Hold on, Loretta. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you every now and then. I'm trying to balance it, but you said something that was a surprise to me, and that stuff always catches me. the human brain and animal brain, mammals, and those brains are different. But you said something wild. You said the chemical in the brain are the same. Just can you build on that and then go back to what you were saying? If I understand it, I'm the safety net. If I get it, the rest of my obviously the people watching are going to get it, because if I get it, anybody can get it. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So animals have the same dopamine that we have. They
Wow.
have the same serotonin that we have. And the job of these chemicals in animals is more obvious because they don't have a verbal brain that's spinning it and restraining themselves. So when you want to understand, like, what's that real feeling that dopamine is creating, experts are giving you some message filtered through research grants in academia. But when you see what animals do in response to dopamine or serotonin, you're like, wow, that's what we humans are doing all the time. And if I give you one just to prove it, just to show how similar our chemistry is, if you have chimpanzees in a zoo and you don't want them to have babies, they give them birth control, and it's the exact same birth control pills that humans use. And another,
oh my God, really?
Yeah. And another example, if you have tortoise, like giant tortoises, so tortoises, reptiles, when they lay eggs, that egg laying muscle is stimulated by oxytocin, which is the same chemical that triggers labor and lactation in human mothers, that a lot of mothers know about this.
Why haven't more people had this conversation? Or maybe
That's
more
it.
do, but why? I mean, that's insane. I mean, the middle class gets only a limited amount of information, and other people maybe can get, elites or what, have access to bigger things. That's why this show is so important. But I like you said, that's it. What the heck? Why are not? I mean, this is basic. Hey, we need our people to know this so they can become better people.
Yeah, so that's why I quit my job and focused on this, because I said to myself, I've studied psychology for decades. I raised my kids reading all the books. Why have I never heard this? And again, I was really motivated as a mom of like, what, I was taught these, same thing that everyone else was taught. And then when it didn't work, and it didn't work on my students, and I was like, how does the brain work? So I started reading all of the books about animals that were written in the 70s, maybe, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. All of that stuff became taboo. Once the internet was invented, we only see the
excellent point,
progressive view of animals, which suggests that animals cooperate and they have empathy and harmony. But the nasty side of animals is completely ignored. And the fact is that the chemicals often motivate the nasty behavior, which I can explain.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So in the animal world, in the state of nature, reproduction is the motivation. And that's not for any good reason, except that
that's all mammals, right? That's all mammals, right?
Yeah.
I mean, us, that same thing, because you got to continue the line, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's not conscious, but your chemicals reward you for reproduction. But when I say reproduction, what I mean is teenagers competing for like a hot partner is exactly what animals are doing all the time. And nurturing, protecting your children from predators, that's what influences reproduction. And that's the behaviors that sort of drive humans crazy.
It's so true too. And here you're explaining something that's a lot more difficult if you aren't doing that comparison, right? You're explaining something that's obviously much more complex than, if we were having this as a scientific conversation or panel or something. Your sentence right now would take about an hour and a half to say, and it's very technical. But let's face it, we're humans. We're more soft and emotional and whatever else than the average Joe. So this this explanation of it all makes a hell of a lot of sense. And again, I'm going to say it a couple times. Why is not more people know? Is there an industry in this at all? Or
Well,
is it you running around with your flag? You're running around with your flag and screaming at everybody, you got to listen. The rain is coming. You got to figure stuff out, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, I keep trying to do that. So the industry, of course, is psychopharmaceuticals, medicating, convincing people that they have a disorder if they're not happy all the time, rather than knowing that our happy chemicals are not designed to be on all the time. They're designed to reward you when you take action to meet a survival need, the way your mammal brain defines survival. And the other important thing, your mammal brain controls your body. So your mammal brain, if people want to look it up, it's the limbic system that people have heard of, the amygdala and the hippocampus. That's in the middle. And that connects to your spine, which controls
the limbic.
Limbic, Limbic. Yeah. So that controls your actions. Your actions, because it's on your spine. And on top of that, we have the fluffy pink stuff, which is when we talk to ourselves and we come up with nice words and we say, I'm just going to open another bottle of wine because you want it, and all the BS that people tell themselves. That comes from the verbal part of the brain, but your actions are controlled by your mammalian limbic system. So your nice words can try to influence your mammal brain, but often they just try to cover up what you really just feel like doing.
That is really interesting. That is now we're getting into something a little bit we talked about before. We don't just scratch
deeper. Yeah,
we keep going. So as that's going down, what is a question here? What is the quickest way to boost the serotonin? So we're able to start to get into more self-control of our emotions, or which affects our conversations. We were talking in the last show about tone is part of conversation. As a matter of fact, it's probably one of the bigger parts. 7% is the words, right? And all that's affected by how you're. And we talked about ADHD, where it's a little different, right? All that stuff that's happening, here and forward is a very complex system. And to be able to go back and look at facts, it's so easy to go the wrong direction. Like you were saying, going through and how to heal people mentally. We talk a lot about mental health and drugs, and that's the world today. But you're not, what's the old saying? You're putting a Band-Aid on it and you're not fixing the problem.
Yeah. So, what's the deeper problem? So this is hard. And when I answer, I'm going to get to this person's question about a quick way to boost serotonin without external triggers. So our brain is wired by its own experience. And you could think of these chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, they're like paving on our neural pathways. So when you're young, if I give you a piece of candy, when you say something nice, then you're building a neural pathway that says, if I say something nice, I'll get candy. Now, that can be complicated because then you go for too much candy because you associate it with social support.
It's the only way to feel good, right?
Yeah, but then there's the other side of it. What if I'm really nasty and someone gives me candy to calm me down, and then my brain gets wired, I'm going to be nasty again because that's the way to get candy, because the brain learns from its own experience. So these neural pathways that build when we are young are really hard to change. And that's the other thing that we need to know about, because so many people are out there selling change without really telling you how hard it is to change and how much we have to really understand.
They're just scratching on the surface, right?
Yeah. So we need to understand these old neural pathways and then maybe guide them, build on top of them, but first to know that they're real. Now let's get into serotonin because this has been really misrepresented in the internet age. So we have been told that serotonin puts you in a good mood. And where does it come from? Animals don't survive by being in a good mood. So
Good point.
they don't sit around on the couch and like get their parents' credit card to order a
Eating
pizza.
popcorn.
Yeah. So animals survive by searching for food. But when they find food, usually a bigger animal tries to take it from them. And if they resist, they can get attacked. And that attack can cause permanent injury, so they starve to death. So the animal brain is designed to constantly compare itself to others and to assert only when it sees that it's in the position of strength and to pull back when it sees itself in the position of weakness. So obviously, we're all looking for a position of strength all the time, but we're not going to have it all the time. That's just reality. So the brain releases serotonin when you see that you're in a position of strength. And that's the good feeling that says, now I could get what I want because I'm in the position of strength. But in the modern
That's a
world,
connection. That's awesome. Go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry. That's a connection. That's awesome.
yeah, but you don't want to be a jerk, like if you're just
Yeah.
pushing people around all the time. So you have to restrain it. So that's the difficult part of being alive is like, I want to assert my strength, but I don't want to be like toddler tantrums the rest of my life. And that there's no easy answer to that. And that's
You got to
why we
build on
can't,
it, right? Practice, right? Just like a
yeah,
muscle, right?
yes, but the
Yeah.
point is you're not going to be happy all the time because you only get the happy chemicals for moments when you're going to assert, but you can't be asserting all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That would wow, that would be a very difficult way to be. You'd be a cheetah that that is just on high energy and they don't last as long. You break yourself down. And I think you were kind of going where this next question is going in that can dopamine and oxytocin and oxy can they work together for long-term happiness? Well, you just said it a second. Now there's different levels of happiness, right? You don't have to be that cheetah running all the time, right? Happiness is something within. We just talked about meditation, that creates, right, some of that feeling as well. What do you think?
Yeah, so there's different kinds of happiness. Dopamine
Yes.
rewards you for this one type of meeting a survival need, and oxytocin rewards you for a different type, and often they're in conflict. So for example, when animals
Ah,
when animals stick together, we are often taught, oh yeah, that's animals stick together, but they don't. If a goat sticks with the herd all the time, it ends up eating grass that has been soiled by another goat and it gets intestinal worms and it dies. So goats
true.
would rather spread out. And when do they come together is when there's a predator. So our brain is always
Safety.
So our brain is always weighing, when do I want to spread out to meet my own needs? And when do I want to cluster with the herd for safety? So dopamine is spreading out for greener pastures, and oxytocin is following the herd for self-protection.
I don't want to have to say 10,000 times. Why the heck aren't people? I mean, that makes perfect sense. They talk about the animal thing, but they aren't connecting it with, it's not a learned behavior. It's a, like nature. It's coming on.
But it's learned. The learned part of it is when I want protection from others, how do I do that? Do I offer them a hit of cocaine in order to make friends with them? Or do I help them do their homework?
Oh,
That's the learned part.
yeah, that's awesome. Now there's all sorts of things that the bot, and it's funny because now you have watches, you're checking your sleep and your rhythm, and we have a lot more information now about what's happening to us. I started getting a little more interested. I had a stroke about 4 or 5 months ago or something like that. And so obviously that was a wake-up call. I've got to, start, I've been invincible for 59 years, in my own opinion. So, you get into the age now and you start checking on yourself. Well, you notice that these things are critical, and how does sleep impact that? How does that make that happen? Or does it?
Oh, sleep is tremendously important. It's number one. And here's the reason. In our nerve cells, we have a reserve of happy chemicals. And our brain
A reserve?
We have literal physical sac, of extra happy chemicals. And we release them. We save that reserve. It's like a tank, your gas tank. You only release them in appropriate moments when you push on the gas. But if the tank is empty, then you don't have anything to release in appropriate moments. And the tank is filled while you're sleeping. So sleep is when you manufacture the happy chemicals and fill your tank. And that's why if you don't get enough sleep, you don't feel good. Even if good things happen, you have no happy chemicals to respond.
Let me ask you real quick in that question. I mentioned about the watch and all that. It talks about things like your temperature and all of that, but there's these different things, and one of them is obviously physical recovery, but also mental recovery. That's what you're talking about there, right? The ability, and it measures how effective, how long that was in the sleep cycle. That's kind of what you're talking about. That was kind of weird. I just looked at that the other day for the first, little bit here. We got a lot more questions. So but I want to ask, right? I mean, sleep is hugely important to the recovery of all that, not only health or physical, but mental.
Yes, sleep is very important, but when you use recovery, there's another aspect of it that I should explain, and this also relates to someone asked about misconceptions. So when you do something that feels great, that great feeling is going to end. No good feeling lasts. So that's why that's like a recovery. Like, if you give a child a cookie, that's a peak moment and then it ends. So everyone's blaming this on social media. But the bottom line is that this is naturally how the brain works. If a cheetah sees a prey, it goes after it, it gets the prey, and then those peak chemicals end. As soon as you get the goal that you're going after, the happy chemicals stop, because that's how your brain resets itself to target a new goal. If you were running on peak all the time, then you wouldn't refill your tank to go after the next goal.
Yeah. I kind of relate that a little bit to a car. If you run 100 miles an hour, drive 100 miles an hour constantly, and that's you're not bringing it back and letting that engine recover, you're going to drive that sucker right into the ground. So serotonin, let's kind of jump around. I see some of the questions here, but there's all these different types of chemicals, which is so funny because now we manufacture them at, the pharmacy companies they live on it. The food makes us not so healthy and unbalanced, and the pharmaceutical company says, hey, I got a pill. And that's obviously the worst way to have or manage this stuff. But on this, serotonin can make us feel lazy instead of happy? ?
Great question. So there's so many different things involved here, but first let's address, like you said, the medication. Our brain is always habituating to what's going on. So if you're feeding serotonin in a pill, your brain starts to habituate by not making your own serotonin, because your brain is saying, oh, I got enough serotonin, so I'm going to stop making it.
Yeah.
it's almost like if you have a cup of coffee every morning, you don't notice the coffee, and then you have to have another coffee to really feel it. So let's also, though,
Yeah.
address, and that's why some people say, these pills make you feel numb. But let's address instead laziness, because I think that's important to understand too. What's often called laziness, I would call it negative expectations. So let's use an example. If I'm a cheetah and I'm running after a gazelle, I only run because I expect to get it. I have positive expectations. But if I see that the gazelle is too far away and I can never get it, I'm not going to waste my energy, because I would starve to death if I ran after gazelles I couldn't
Smart.
get. So if
Smart.
a person has missed, predators miss 95% of the time. But when a human misses, you may have this like poor me attitude, like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm never going to get the gazelle. I'm always going to miss. And then you're not going to try. And then if you don't try, like you don't turn on the dopamine, because you've built this, oh, I'm never going to get it. Poor me. Nothing goes right for me. So positive expectations is what feels good, but it has to be realistic expectations.
What an interesting thought you just said, because the body, the person does what the brain kind of leads them to doing, because it has the concept of thought that you're used to. And there's a saying that says, and I want to get into this endorphin here in a little bit with working out, but what it's saying is that if you're constantly, like you just said, thinking negative, that you're going to attract negativity. You're going to, because your decision, not that you're attracting it, but the decisions you make,
you're going to wire it in. You're going to wire in the negativity.
Great point, man.
Expectations are real physical neural pathways in your brain. So if you get a few, gazelles, then you expect to get gazelles. If you miss a few, you expect to miss, and then you don't turn on the effort.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the more you do it. The more you do it, the more it becomes real. The more your body has to follow that method. So one thing I've noticed, so we're getting into endorphins now. So I've gone through those times. I'm sure everybody has, where you're not in your game. Things are going wrong. Things are this, and you're kind of down on it. And you can be that way. Producer Barbie actually taught me about this next subject a little bit, because for her, she works out every day, all the time. Very regularly, and she's in her 50s or whatever. Great health, but she didn't do it for that. She does it because when she does that, it helps her mind. She's got anxiety and she's got things that need to settle down. And I'm assuming the endorphins from that exercise, like the question is, how does that compare to other methods? I know that works well. What's the whole picture there, though?
So my personal opinion is that is not the path. I recognize that this is what is being taught to people today. And so
interesting. Okay.
Anyone who is getting success with this method, I applaud them, and I'm not criticizing it, but let me suggest another explanation. So endorphin is what is the brain's natural opioid. The word means endogenous morphine, and it is triggered by real physical pain. And
pain.
Pain, yes. And so when you inflict pain on yourself, you are like an injured animal that can run despite the pain, because the body releases opioid that allows you to save your life by running even when you're in pain. So that's the natural job of endorphin. And the idea is supposedly that if you work out, you feel good and then you're happy.
Yeah.
I do not agree with this at all. So let me explain. Our brain is only meant to have endorphin when we're in pain. The other chemicals are what you need. You need dopamine that says, I can get it, that makes you run after meeting a need. And oxytocin is what says, I have the protection of a group. Serotonin is what says, I'm strong enough to hold on to my resources. And so that's what we really want. So if you exercise and you get a high and you get into your car and you go to the office, and then you have all this negative thinking once you get to the office, you're not going to spark the dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. But many people, they spark serotonin by going to the gym because they feel like, I got it going on, I'm a strong person. They spark dopamine because they say, I'm going to do 10 push-ups today and 12 push-ups tomorrow, and that's the goal-oriented dopamine. And they also get the oxytocin at the gym because they feel like, I'm part of the, cool people at the gym. So, but it doesn't carry over. But it doesn't carry over to the rest of,
Wow.
Yeah, but it doesn't carry over to the
another
rest of
time.
life.
Why the heck why is this limited information, but it doesn't carry over to what I got to throw that in there. It's just so,
why does
obviously I'm thinking the way most people do, right? Because I'm looking at that question, I'm saying that, and it's not what the natural need of the chemical is, or the effect of the chemical.
Exactly.
When people use synthetic chemicals, do they get a different is there it seems like everything you've said is kind of different, and it makes sense because we're still part of that hunter-gatherer, we've got those genes, that DNA in this. So I get it. Eventually, over time things evolve, but I mean, we're talking over hundreds of millions, billions of years that it takes to evolve. So we're kind of still there, obviously, What about serotonin? Let's go back to that. Like I said, we're going to pop around a little bit. I'm afraid to ask the question because what us average people are learning isn't sometimes even near the truth. But with what's the best way to increase your serotonin without external validation? Pretty good question. You got to have some self-confidence and some working on that muscle to get there, right?
Yeah. So this is a fabulous question, because the fact of life is that external validation does feel good. And we do prefer to get a pat on the back from someone else rather than having to give ourselves a pat on the back. So this is the challenge. Yeah. So this is the challenge of life. So I had to struggle with that like everyone else. And in fact, I have to say that I've written 8 books on this subject, and 2 of the books are explicitly on this question that was asked. So one of them,
I knew you wrote a lot of books, but you've written obviously more than 8, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's impressive.
So my book that's on this subject, it's called Status Games: Why We Play and How to Stop. So I'll try to give like a 1-sentence answer because there are so many good questions. But how to get serotonin without external validation. But you don't want to be like a delusional idiot that's just saying, I got it going on. I'm good enough and smart enough and people like me, just like in the, Saturday Night Live.
Make it to make it. Remember that term?
Yeah, exactly.
So accurate, but yeah.
That is the challenge of life. What helped me personally, I will say, is I read a lot of biographies. And when you read about prominent people, you see that their life was shit and they suffered all the time. So real life is hard. And it's only in retrospect that it appears that someone else's life was good. But another simple way to look at it is like, if you're the alpha gorilla, you are constantly facing challenges from other gorillas that want your spot. So do not think that other people are getting this serotonin all the time and you are missing out. The secret of life is to know that I'm not going to get this serotonin all the time. I am going to have droops. And when I have droops, I don't have to do harmful things.
You mean just not as much coming out through.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm not going to have it all the time. And I don't have to rush to cheer myself up in some harmful way.
It's interesting you say that because when we were first talking about this exact subject, and you kind of brought it back to whole here, a thought went through my head, and I said, well, if it was always like that, then where's the actual happy? I mean, if that's what your baseline is, then it's a different baseline. It's unrealistic, but it's different. And when we finish off that part, I'd like to get into how current technology, we talked about social media. I don't think it's positive, but let's kind of start rolling down that way of the road.
Yeah. So the currently popular theory is that technology messes up with your dopamine and that you should go on to a dopamine diet. So again, there's so many different issues interlinked here. But
wait. What do you mean by go into a dopamine diet? What does that mean?
Going on a dopamine diet. They're saying that you should, like you use the word, like resetting yourself to just stop using all technology. So it would be like going off coffee for a month. Yeah, like if you went off coffee for a month, and then you would not be such a slave to it. That's the idea.
And it'd be more effective. It'd give you more of a
well, I'm not advocating that. I'm saying that
I know that's true.
Yeah. So the currently popular view, my problem with it is that they're blaming the technology, and they're saying that they have purposely gotten you addicted and it's their fault. And my opinion is, once you blame them and blame the technology, you are disempowering yourself, and you're saying, it's not my fault I can't get organized and focused. It's their fault. And then you lose awareness of your own control mechanism, right?
Yeah, and you lose the power to use it.
Exactly. So the point is that people had distractors and fast, easy solutions all through human history. And people were challenged to avoid harmful attractions all through human history. And there are healthy ways to use technology. So it's on me, to use healthy ways to use every possible happy solution that you can think of. That if you say, oh, you should never eat ice cream because then you'll abuse ice cream. Well, no, I have a tablespoon of ice cream and I have 5 minutes of my telephone.
I love ice cream. I love ice
cream. So the point is that technology gives you oxytocin if you use it to feel like you're in a group, and it gives you
have control. So have control over it.
Yeah. And so if you have no other way of feeling like you're in a group, then you might abuse it. The same with serotonin. You could get serotonin on your phone because it makes you feel like, oh, I got this much popularity. If you have no other way to feel your own feeling, then you would overuse it. The same with dopamine. If you're want excitement, if you have no other way to create that good feeling of approaching a goal, then you would overuse it. But it's not the fault of the phone. And again, you keep asking the excellent question of why doesn't anyone tell us this? And just to say that nobody is told this, if PhDs in psychology.
Oh, wow.
No, psychiatrists, not only do they not learn this, but they would attack me for saying this. So this is not the currently popular view, because the currently popular view is that everything is not your fault. Everything is the fault of society, and society should fix it for you. And our natural state is peace and love, and we should get peace and love without effort. And otherwise we should blame society. That's the currently popular culture.
And part of that is the safe spaces that people need now. And, I think what snowflake is one of the terms I heard with the current society. The nice thing is, though, society changes and they learn, it's a pendulum. right? It goes all the way over here. What should have been here, but goes all the way over here. Then it goes all the way over here. And everybody, most people, especially the middle class, they live in the center. And, all of this is stuff that helps. By the way, I'm going to go back. I've had to skip some questions, not questions, but comments, which are all pro you, all over you. And so I'm going to pop a couple off, but that's a part of what you're talking. We need to make sure this happens, right? We need to make sure, and we can't right now, but these kind of programs, these kind of things, society starts to evolve and soak some of this in, right? So there is hope for the future to be a little bit better of a human being naturally.
Yes, that's why I'm doing this, and I'm just getting tiny little drops. And thank you so much for creating an audience to spread this information, because the main sources are spreading the take a pill philosophy.
Well, yeah, and that's part of that I don't know if it's tyranny, but it's big business, big corp. It affects our lives. By the way, I promised to read a couple of these things off, and then I took a hard right. So let me come back to center here. And thank you very much for making brain science so accessible and practical. And these are the things, the World Health Organization should be talking like you right now, but instead it's the elite. How do I make this my benefit? And that is probably why you don't hear about it so much, right? That's you alluded to.
Yeah, but they want you to support them. I mean, they benefit, but they want to get your support by persuading you that you're a victim. And so many people have been persuaded that they're a victim, and then they're giving up their power over their own brain.
So what about preventing dopamine addiction? I mean, again, this goes back to the other question, but what it also does is again, we're going back to this addiction thing, but you were looking at social media and the chemicals released differently than that. In that citrus, this is a power you need to have within to be able to manage that. That's the basis of everything, isn't it?
Yes, but possibly this person's question is from a parent's perspective. So,
okay.
I'm
Good
wondering,
point. Okay.
Because even though people listening now, they can say, oh yeah, I have this power inside me. But when you see your child, who you may have heard, like even toddlers are being addicted. And so the brain.
I was just talking about that earlier. They're born with a phone in their hand.
So here's the bottom line. Our brain is not wired when we're born, but most of the wiring is built in the first 7 years of life. And that wiring lasts for a lifetime. And it's very
creates your personality, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Right? I mean,
and personality now is blamed on genes, because they can measure genes and they can get grant money to study genes, but you can't measure a person's first 7 years of life, and you can't get grant money to study it. So this whole thing is being ignored. But it's not just to blame the phone, but it's whatever a child experiences in their early years is building their wiring.
Yep.
And let's just use a simple word, passivity. So when my kid was young, I turned on Sesame Street, and I was told that was a good thing. But when I turned off Sesame Street, she would cry. So I would leave it on. And so that wired her for passivity. And you know what? Before television was invented, there were other things like, children were raised around fires. My father's sister burned to death from a kerosene heater. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Back in the dark ages of,
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So there were always like challenges and reason, like how do you stimulate a child but keep them out of trouble? It's always been challenging. And the current generation is always being fed this idea that your life is so much harder and your kids are having a harder life. And these kids are getting the message that their life is so hard.
They're getting a totally different message, which is anti positive for how the human being is built to act, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
So to answer the person's question, so how can you prevent dopamine addiction from, so we need a lot of different goals and we need to set ourselves a goal. And I use the simple example that if I try to build a tower of blocks with my child, with my grandchild, I personally, build it with my grandchild.
love
He
my
doesn't want
grandchild.
to build the blocks. He wants to knock down the tower that I built. So that's not teaching him a healthy way to stimulate dopamine. So the
Right.
healthy way to stimulate dopamine is to get excitement about your own little action, your own little goal, your own little project. I did 3 blocks. Now I'm going to do 4 blocks. Now I'm going to do 5 blocks. That's the healthy path to dopamine.
Wow. Wow. It's the world is missing out on so much. It's just, it's, I don't know if this is a reality or not, but the old saying, a government or something it's easier to control the masses if you keep them, the less educated they are, the more they're easy to manipulate and control. And this is an odd, this is not only good information, but it kind of leans into that and makes you think, hey, yeah, why aren't we learning all this? Because it's out there, right? These are facts. This isn't I mean, yes, we all have different things. You've done your own individual research, but this isn't you standing out on the street corner saying, hey, I believe this just because I'm a doctor. I believe it
Well,
because
it's
right?
mine because I put it together by reading
Right.
hundreds of books. And if I were still employed as a professor, I would be out the door if I said these things because it's
Yes.
very,
Yes, you would.
yeah. So nobody else is saying them because I'm retired. If you wanted to have a paid job, you couldn't say this.
Wow, that's powerful. That gets into the whole schools. That gets into the whole current events of today. I mean, it puts a spotlight. I mean, we all know what the higher education, especially higher education, but realistically all education, what challenges they're going through as people put a spotlight on that. And we right here, you just put a spotlight because it's happening. And you know what? You put a spotlight on something that people see every day. If you don't go the pathway that this academic world lives in, just like Hollywood and other, that is a dangerous thing to do, and that's disgusting to me.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, no,
So there's a really fabulous question there. So I just
which
want to
one?
jump in before we run out of time because this is so important. So the person is saying, what's the fastest way to increase oxytocin? And unfortunately, all the fast ways are bad. And that's what people need to
Yeah,
know. So the fast way is like, let's have a beer. Let's have another beer. Let's have another beer, and
self-medicating.
let's go to the pub where everybody knows your name, or let's
Yeah,
people who say, well, I had to overeat because that's how I socialize. So the bottom line is that there is no fast, easy way to stimulate oxytocin, which is why in our own
which is
head,
good.
mm, in our own head, we have to say, okay, my animal brain wants protection from others, but I'm always afraid that there's predators because my animal brain is designed to always look out for predators. How do animals get protection from predators? is not by being supportive and loving and nurturing, is that I'm I'm gonna hide behind you so that the wolf eats you. So, when I'm hanging out with a group of people and I feel like, "Hey, they're all giving me up to the wolves," this is how the animal brain works. So, I can be a little more tolerant of the people
Mm.
around me and know that they're just animals like me. And that's really the fast, easy way, is to just be accepting of my animal impulses and to be accepting of your animal impulses. That doesn't give you the right to abuse me or for I should accept abuse, but just lower the temperature a little bit.
Wow, great point. Great. It's the only bad thing about this show is you are suddenly realizing how much we don't know, how clueless that we have, and it should, there, and it's accessible, and this is not hard stuff to understand. This is a great question because I come from a musical background. Producer Barbie does. My mom has, well, she passed away, but a musical store, and so I grew up in this, and always have. And I think everybody, just by music affects you, right? It now, is that just an emotional effect, or like they're saying here, how does that influence dopamine and endorphins?
Very good question. So,
Yeah,
on
I
the
like it.
one hand, I would say it's individual in the sense that if you're exposed to music when you're young, then you build the wiring to enjoy music. But if you're
Ah,
not, then you don't, but that's okay because then you build the wiring to enjoy something else. Just like some people love a roller coaster, but I hate a roller coaster.
oh no, yeah,
So it's very
no,
individual. But
yeah,
for
yeah,
people
that
who
makes
who
sense.
like it, then they get so but let me explain, for people who like music, it's a great way to stimulate dopamine because dopamine is stimulated by anticipating what is coming next. It's sort of like I said, the cheetah is
Yeah,
looking around for a gazelle that it can catch. And when you are
right.
listening to music, your brain is constantly anticipating the next note. We're not doing it consciously, but that's why music stimulates dopamine because you're
Ooh,
anticipating the next sound.
ooh,
Or like if you read a novel or watch a movie, you're
yes.
anticipating what's gonna happen, and that also stimulates dopamine. And, just, very quickly, I'll say, endorphin is stimulated by crying, and for some people, music stimulates crying, and that's
Oh
related
yeah.
in that way.
Yeah, touches you, a song, right? I'm a big Matchbox 20 and Rob Thomas because I honor the way he is a musician, but more realistically, he touches on the emotions that I can connect with more often than anybody. He's beautiful music, but that's why one of my he's probably my favorite. So because of what you just said, right?
Yeah, but there's one other aspect to music. So my natural animal brain is always looking for threats. That's how like our caveman ancestors survived because they were always looking for threats. But then you could make yourself miserable in a good life if you're always looking for threats. So
True.
anything that distracts you is good. But there are many bad distractions. So music is a good distraction.
Yeah. Wow. And it adds to you while you're recovering this other part. You talk about it, recover this other part of the brain, refill on your refill your sacks. And that also is helping you do that because it's a good distraction, as you were saying. Um, this is an interesting question. And what is the best way? And again, I think this kind of goes back. I have a couple of dogs, and they know they're not allowed in the studio they go to work with me every day, and sometimes they like to play. My 65-pound girl is over here poking at me, making fun of me because she knows she's getting away with something she shouldn't. My other 121, she just left. I think I made her feel guilty. Anyway, so in creating a long-lasting serotonin boost, are we missing the point? Are we good here? Is that again, I'm not an expert.
It's a terrific question, and especially in the real estate industry where the ups and downs are
I was going to say that.
So colossal ups and downs all the time, So serotonin is about feeling that I am strong enough to meet my survival needs. And so it's so easy to think, oh, I'm not strong enough to meet my survival needs because this goes wrong and this goes wrong. And then I'm going to go bankrupt and go hungry and nobody likes me, blah, 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 blah. But if you just stop what I explain in my book, Status Games, stop for 1 minute and remind yourself of all the times that you solved a problem. If I have a problem, I'll come up with a solution, and stop for 1 minute 3 times a day and say, I have a problem, but I'll solve it. I've solved it before and I'll solve it again. And that's
literally actively do that as a physical exercise, you're saying?
Yeah. 1 minute, 3 times a day. And that will build
that muscle again. Yeah.
And in the beginning, it will feel fake, but in time, you will build a neural pathway that says, I have the strength to meet my survival needs, despite the fact like stuff is going wrong now, and I don't know how I'm going to solve it, but I've solved problems before, and whatever comes along, I'll solve it.
Wow. That is, personal development growth naturally, the way that what if your religious beliefs, how the heavens, intended it to way, or how the just nature intended the way we are in nature intended. This has been a fantastic question. And before I want to get a comment, a final comment, kind of wrapping everything up from you, and then we'll wait by. You'll head back into the green room, and I'll do some more stuff at the end here. There's a little video at the end that is really, really popular. Stick around if it's good. But also, the only reason I interjected right now is because while I'm doing that, if you would put your contact, see, as you know, this is live, so people are talking to us. But in 24 hours, there'll be another 200 people that win it. And so many times I get this question, but I'm not the expert. So, this is a good way to handle that. I also put my own email so that I could, if somebody emails me, I can send it to you. But would you do that for me?
Yeah. So I put my website in the chat, and I encourage.
Oh, wow. You're all over it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Go ahead.
So I encourage you, please. First, my website has a huge amount of free resources that explains all of this. Also has a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart. At the bottom of the page.
What does that mean?
At the bottom of the page, there's a form. You put in your email address, and you'll get 1 email a day for 5 days. And if it's not working, if you don't get the emails, let me know. There's a contact form at the top, and you can.
There it is, right there. There's your website. Go ahead.
And there's a contact. Happy to hear from you anytime. But you get 1 email a day for 5 days explaining each of the chemicals. Let me know if you don't get it. And it also puts you on my newsletter. And every week you'll get more tips about how to apply it to your life.
Because the information's evolving anyway. I mean, we're not done learning things, or certainly this kind of information isn't the only kind that we don't know about. There's evolution going on. So, right, that newsletter thing gives update. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to sell for you here, but it's too hard to resist. It gives updates as far as how things continue to evolve in this very critical statement, right? Yes. All right. Well, doctor, I love saying doctor. That was an awesome conversation. I like this last person here. Let me throw it up here. Serotonin boost. Such a fun and informative. I could not agree more. Here's a golfer. Yeah, they like that stuff. A fun and session here. And I missed a bunch of other similar comments. Great people, great subject. Why don't you give us a wave? You can listen in the green room if you want, and I'll put you back there and I'll finish my duties. Do you have anything that I missed before we do that? I wasn't thinking anything that in your opinion we missed that you'd like to give a shout out about?
Just to reemphasize that social comparison is something our brain is doing all the time, because animals are always comparing, like, am I the big monkey? Am I the little monkey?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could waste your life feeling like you're the little monkey, or you could feel like, oh, I'm the big monkey, but everybody, blah, blah, blah. But just to know that this whole monkey social comparison thing is just a natural, normal thing, and we all have to live with it.
Wow. Great closing comments. Say goodbye to everybody here, because I know they love you, man. All right. Oh, sorry. Hold on. I'm not tied to anything big. All right. Say thank you again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
All right. Thanks. All right. So I know I didn't have to do that, but you all know I'm not standard, typical, whatever. Anyway, that was amazing. And what's really starting to develop in this program that we have here is that we spend an hour really getting information that's important. And as you could see, people are thirsty for it. They're asking good questions, and of course we like it when they blow smoke up our dress. You know that, I'll say. Anyway, they are thirsty, and we are all thirsty, and we are all on a way of evolving. And it takes effort, like she was talking about. You have to build the muscle of everything that you want to improve. And there's certainly, if there's an ability to control yourself, to know how to control yourself, I mean, that's like a superhero power, right? I mean, that's what people dream of, is being able to manage how they react, how they talk, how they think, be able to be more in control of who you are. And you do that by being authentic, as we talked about earlier, but you also do that by listening to what actual technology, science, what was the old saying? You got to listen to the science. That was forever a big thing. I josh a little political twist there, but hey, as I always say, hey, this is Insights and Straight Talk. I'm Rod Duff. A lot of times, Barbie, I didn't actually see her in the post today. I was surprised. We were just talking before the show. But producer Barbie, she's out in California, so she'll jump on and make some comments and ask some really good questions. But I was impressed as hell. Doctor, it was amazing. The information, and it doesn't sound wacko. It sounds natural. It sounds, the way we were actually made and developed. So I'm gonna sign off here. There's a little video afterwards. I think you guys will like it. Those who've seen these shows a few times, that one's been there for a little bit, and it more pokes towards the political side. Why we're doing this? We need to be smarter. We need to be more educated. We need to be more informed. We need to make ourselves worthy of coming together and making sure that our political system, I don't care what side of the aisle you're, our political system serves us. But we got to know how to do that. And we got to be able to talk like the doctor here sometimes and bring information that is believing the science. So again, Insights and Straight Talk with Rod Duff and producer Barbie. We're on YouTube. We're starting to I'm working with some of the team to separate the voice. So we'll also be on some of the, just vocal podcasts, Spotify, other ones like that. So in the meantime, like I always say, hey, everybody, go wave to yourself. I got the information down there for the website to be able to connect. So jump on there. The great Oh, damn. My timing was really off. I was jumping around and my finger hit the button. I was going to, I've been getting pretty good at that, but that was ugly. that was the other side. That's the common man. Ah! All right. I've done enough. That's it. Rod Duff with Insights and Straight Talk signing off, and I am out.
Hundreds of trillions of dollars coursing through our economic veins, there exists a pathway where no U.S. citizen needs endure poverty. Every child should be shielded from involuntary hunger and thirst. By eradicating greed and corruption, we pave the way forward. This chapter delves into the rationale behind our governmental expenditure and prompts a critical inquiry into how our leaders allocate our resources.